Welcome to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, where we sit down with the people who give shape, texture, and voice to the stories that matter here on the North Fork of Long Island, and sometimes far beyond. Some of our guests are rooted here by generations, others join us from elsewhere to share their work, their perspective, or their connection to the community, but all bring something that resonates, something that adds to the ongoing conversation. We talk about what's changing, what's worth holding on to, and the currents of history, both quiet and loud, that run through this place. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 177, we sit down with Gianna Volpe, an award-winning journalist, broadcaster, and storyteller whose voice has become a vital part of the East End. From her early curiosity about the world to studying photojournalism at University of Missouri, Gianna has built a career grounded in empathy, creativity, and the unwavering commitment to truth. Through her reporting, photography, and her beloved radio show, Heart of the East End, she's spent years celebrating the people, stories, and culture that make this community so special. In our conversation, Gianna opens up about the experiences that shaped her family's roots, the ups and downs she's faced along the way, and the perseverance that's kept her moving forward. We also talk about what drew her to visual storytelling, the challenges and rewards of journalism today, and how she continues to find meaning and hope while navigating an increasingly complex political environment. Above all, Gianna reminds us why local stories and the human connection behind them matter now more than ever. So I hope you enjoy episode 177 with Gianna Volpe. This episode was recorded June 20th, 2025. Welcome to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast today. I'm really looking forward to talking to you today.
I'm really looking forward to talking to you as well, Chris.
Oh, thank you. And then usually in the beginning, I'd like to just start, if you can give us a little background about yourself, where you were born and raised.
My name is Gianna Volpe. I was born in Englewood Hospital, and I was raised in Cresskill, New Jersey.
And then how far back can you go in terms of your ancestry?
My ancestry. So my grandma, Ida de Blasio, wrote this extensive encyclopedic history of her side, and it's looking like, I believe her father came over in 1909, and her mother a few years later.
Mm-hmm.
And then on my grandfather, my grandpa Joe, I can't remember when he came over. She told me too. I think a little bit after that.
Okay.
And then on my father's side, my Italian ancestors on his father's side, they came over in the 20s and 30s.
Okay.
But my grandmother is 100% French Cajun.
Oh.
So they came here like 100 years before my Italian ancestors, because they were like French fur trappers that came down during like the time of the Louisiana Purchase, and were given like 80 acres down in like the swamps of Louisiana. They ended up settling in Gonzales outside of what is New Orleans.
Yes. I've heard of that because I told you I grew up in New Orleans.
Oh my gosh. So you know about Gonzales?
Yes.
Okay. Sometimes I kind of wish we still had that land, but, she no longer lived there anymore. We still have cousins down there who are goober farmers, right? Isn't that what they call peanuts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, goober.
I had forgotten that you're from New Orleans.
Yeah.
When did you come up here?
To Greenport?
Yeah.
Well, that was 2.5 years ago, but my parents are from here, from Long Island, but I came up originally after Hurricane Katrina.
Oh, wow.
In 2006, I think.
Right. Oh my gosh, I remember that story.
Yeah.
That was a tough story.
Yeah.
My grandma sold I think she sold the farm down in Gonzales just before Katrina. Which is wild to think about.
But did they eventually make their way up to, or did they make their way up to New York, or they were always?
No, it's rare to find a Cajun outside of the bayou.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're a very small population. I think my grandparents must have met down there.
Mm-hmm.
I should find out. I should find that story out.
But did you go back to visit?
You know what? The first big road trip that I ever took was down to visit my grandma down in Gonzales. And I was the map person and also the DJ. But I was, it was like cassettes, and I was playing like Hank Williams Sr. and like old Billboard, cassettes and whatnot. It's cool down there.
Yeah.
It was so fun to see. I have this old Coca-Cola sign from that my dad and I pried off of a barn that they were using to cover up a hole in the barn. And it was all rusted up, and it's got like BB,
the BB
gun holes
in it.
And I remember the fire ants, right? I learned about fire ants, and we went out at night and we found the crawdads.
Yes.
Coming out of the hole. We put the red light over the flashlight. I found a stick bug. My dad was like, you're never going to see one. And I was like, I'm going to find one. And I did. And he couldn't believe it. And I remember I learned about like fleas, like the old dogs down there. Yes. Missy, she had fleas. I remember driving into New Orleans, and I was like, Dad, there's like clouds. I go, this cloud, Dad, it looks like an angel like kneeling at the foot of another angel, like in a bed. And he's like, what are you talking about? And then he looked up. It looked like a painting. And I remember saying, pull over, like take a picture of it. And he was like, no, it's going to be gone by the time we get there. And it stayed like that. Isn't there like a crazy long bridge? Where's the crazy? Do you know what I'm talking about?
On the Pontchartrain bridge.
Longest bridge.
That bridge is long from New Orleans up to Covington, I think.
I loved. It was where I discovered my love for exploring abandoned spaces. Because we went looking through the property, and we found like old barns that had been like abandoned on our family property. And my dad let me go in and like explore. And I remember the little like tiny swamps on the sides of the highways and stuff.
Yes.
With like random, you're like, what is in there? Saw an armadillo on the side of the road. I don't think it was still with us, but it was the first time I saw an armadillo.
Yeah. What about, did you have crawfish boils or go to Mardi Gras?
We went to the aquarium.
Yes.
Great aquarium. I remember there was an albino alligator. I remember that's where I learned what taxidermy was. I remember that everyone was friendly. And I had been growing up in New Jersey and New York, and it's like you don't even look at each other, really, strangers.
Yes.
Because in the Northeast, when you look at a stranger, it's like a challenge. Like you know?
How long are you going to keep eye contact? Or are you going to just turn away?
You just don't do that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's like, do we have a problem here? Kind of a thing. And that's something that I also learned as a difference spending time in the Midwest to get my degree. But I remember in the South, more than in the Midwest, people look at each other. Mm-hmm. They're more curious, and it's not like that.
Yes.
And it's very hard. It was hard to assimilate at first for me, because I'm looking around and I'm like, what are these people staring at? And do we have a problem here? Yeah. And I learned very quickly, nobody wants a problem. They would like hide behind their boyfriend, and I'm like, oh, okay. They look here. Yes. And more often, but in the South and in New Orleans, people would say hello and like, how are you? And I was like, wow, as a kid, I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. And then, so this was all on your dad's side, right?
My father is half Cajun, French Cajun,
okay,
and half Italian.
Okay.
On my father's side, most of them settled like in Brooklyn.
Okay.
The Brooklyn Volpes. And then my mother's side is all Italian. So I'm like 75-25.
Okay. That's kind of how I am.
Oh, what is your...
Mine's like 70 Italian or 60 something Italian, and then I have Irish.
Okay.
That's pretty much it. Usually.
I've never done the DNA testing because I'm a little skittish about it, and I'm glad because now you see.
Well, like with 23andMe, it's like
they're selling all the data, and I'm like glad that I was conservative in that way because I would not, you know.
You don't know what they're going to do.
Well, and I remember my dad mentioning at some point, and who knows if this is a rabbit hole kind of a thing, but talking about like developing weapons using stuff like that. I don't know. But interestingly, I did speak to my dad, and he said that I think we have somebody was Irish way back. If I did do one of those tests, I might find something. Who knows? I hear stories all the time about.
And it's always changing. They do an update.
Oh, true. I didn't think about that.
So it's interesting. I did do it through Ancestry. You did? Yeah. But I'm glad Ancestry is still going strong right now, but who knows? Yeah,
you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. But
I worry about stuff like that as far as like my digital footprints. I don't know. I haven't been as careful. I think it's more like I've lived the way of, let them. And, what are they going to find? Like if you're living above board, you don't have to worry. And that's sort of the way that I've kind of had to live because like one of my standbys that I stand by, I have a hard enough time sleeping without doing something wrong. And that's why I'm still haunted by like the handful of like not nice things that I've said or like, or done that I just, at some point I'm like, look, I can't handle it. So I do not, go down certain roads with people or with things.
Yes.
Period.
But then also I wanted to ask, because you mentioned your one grandma.
Yes. Ida.
Ida, she's Italian.
Yes.
And did you get to meet any of your other grandparents as well?
Yes. I am very, as Ida would say, hold on, Resabona. It means good stock. She says, I'm from good stock. The women in my family tend to live forever. I think my great aunt was 109 3/4 when she passed because the podiatrist cut her toenail wrong. At that age, That's all it takes. But it's like, technically it wasn't. Well, I guess, it probably is all age at that point. But that's a good run. And it's one of those things where it's like you think you want to live forever. But like, I remember I used to go visit her, my Aunt Angelina. And when you are living to the point where you're losing, you've lost everyone, and you're like losing children, it was like,
yeah, when you're still
like, okay, I used to think that I wanted to be like, oh, I'm going to download my consciousness into a computer, right? And you watch enough sci-fi and you talk to enough centenarians, and you realize that that's actually a curse to live forever. They say like there's never enough time, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel. I'll let you know in a few decades.
Yes.
But I've talked to her. I asked her once as a kid, why did you get on the boat to come to America? And she said, because it was too far to swim. Or no, she told me that a reporter asked her that. And she said it was too far to swim. And I'm like, you're hilarious. But, I think about, there's a lot of talk these days about immigration and doing it the right way, when not that long ago, in our grandparents' time and just before, you just came. With
just came
$3 in a dream.
Yeah.
That's it. But I think about my grandpa Joe, and he would always say, we done good since we come to this country. I think about that often.
What did they do for a living?
So my grandpa Joe, I think he came over with his brothers, he and his brothers had a donkey, and they would go up and down the main drag in Englewood, I believe, advertising for the movies coming up. But my grandma's father, which I have to look at her thing, Attilio, I think his name was, he had an ice and coal business. And he also had several properties. And I think it's fascinating because after he passed, my great-grandmother, Carolina Bongiovanni, she managed the businesses. And this was before women could own property and could have credit cards and all these things. And I think about, like, what a badass,
Yeah.
Resebona, So from that, thinking about that, I'm like, yeah, we done all right since we came to this country.
Yeah.
That was back when the American dream was still possible. Or more possible, I should say.
More possible. Yeah. It still could have been challenged, but...
Oh, it was challenging.
It was
I'm not saying it wasn't hard.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it wasn't hard, because it was.
Yes.
I mean, I know myself living out here without family, trying to, like, put a roof over my own head. Are you kidding? I mean, I worked like 6 jobs for several years. And you need very strong, you need to be, these days, you almost have to be a little crazy. And you really have to, you gotta want it so bad. And you gotta, like, fight for it, despite
all the obstacles.
It's really I mean, I would go so far as to say, I don't even know how possible it even is. Because I think about, I bought in 2020, seeing, and the market had always been outpacing me. And I looked at what was going on economically with the pandemic and everyone moving out here. And I just thought to myself, if I don't buy anything right now, I won't be able to compete with the city in a year for a rental. And not only was I right about that, but a mere 3 years later, looking at the economic picture and thinking about, I was like, I don't know how anyone could do it. And it has only gotten worse since then.
Yes.
You know, I got I was honored last night at a Juneteenth celebration for making good trouble. And in my acceptance speech, I described it as the American myth. At press time, unless there are big changes, real estate is being bought up and privatized and repackaged to sell back to young people as rentals.
Yes, and then young people won't be able to ever buy something.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
I said, as it stands. Oh wait, hold on. I have it in my. I still have it. Okay. I said. I only have it because it was last night. As it stands, our children will already not be able to afford what has become the American myth. I mean, there could be change, but when you look at a budget bill that's on the table and the stranglehold that democracy is under right now, the chances are very slim.
Yeah, in terms of turning it back.
Yeah, and as far as access to information, and it's tough. It's a really tough moment because not only are the people divided so much, but it would be such an upward battle to bring people back together in time. Everyone's so mad at each other, and they are failing to see that we're all on the same side.
Yes.
The people that on the other side, I mean, gosh, it's a very, very small number. Wild times.
But they're happy keeping us divided that way.
Well, it's by design.
Yeah.
It's for that reason.
Yeah.
That's the people that they don't care. I mean, I've worked for people of that class, and it's such a divergence that it's almost like it's hard for them to even relate. Like for us, like let's say we go to the grocery store and on the way out we throw a quarter in one of those gum machines. The equivalent to someone from that class of throwing a quarter in the gum machine is buying the whole store, every product on the shelf, and all the people in it. It's just like universes apart. So we're just like kind of like, it's like a talking bug.
Yes.
And I know because I remember being looked at like that when I would talk to some of the people. Like it was like a very amusing, like if you go to a Disney movie and you see a talking chipmunk, like Alvin, you're like, oh, that's so cute. It's stuff that we can't imagine.
Yeah.
But that's why the next line is in that, what I said last night, that not only will our children not be able to afford the American myth, but it's the human soul itself that's under siege. And that the more that we do stand together, I mean, it's possible for us to turn things around.
Yeah. I think it's getting back to some core value that we all can agree on instead of criticizing each other on smaller things. We need to come together in order to, because I think that elite class will continue to point out, well, you don't agree with him because of this, so don't talk with.
That's just don't look at me.
Yeah,
don't look at me and my money.
Yeah,
that's
while we're doing all our stuff.
Well, did I talk? Because right now, immigration and people that are coming to the country are being villainized, and they're being painted as criminals and all of these terms that do not belong there. If you look at the facts, you look at the studies, and you see that an American citizen is twice as likely to be committing crime. And then when you want to look at, like violent, sexual crimes, and you look at who's really committing these crimes, it's a lot of the people have just been misled, just deeply misled. And, again, back to the budget bill, when you are trying to put a provision in there to not regulate AI for 10 years, when AI is what has already cost countless American jobs for those who have shelled out astronomical amounts of money to get like a college degree, to become like a legal aid or something. Those jobs are going away. We've lost clerk positions. And then meanwhile, we are removing the people who are picking our food, the people who are taking care of our children when childcare is already unaffordable. It's no matter what way and what industry you look at it, it's hard to watch as someone who deeply cares about this country and about democracy and about other people. And the most wild part of it all is that the people that are the most misled are disguised as patriots when what they are following, the star they are following, is not one of American values.
Yes.
The Lady Liberty did not say, give me your rich Russian oligarchs at $5 million a pop. It's your poor, sick, tired, huddled masses. This is we are supposed to be a melting pot, a country that is, and that goes back to my thing. What did I say? Well, no, I wrote it in the post for today. That is as strong as it is diverse.
Yes.
Our differences is what makes us strong. If everyone believes the same thing, then it's like the potato famine. If there is a problem that the, heterogeneous whatever can't contend with, we need other people thinking in other ways that can help us to figure it all out.
Yes.
And I think what it comes down to when you really look at it is insecurity. It's because you want to look at like the attack on the LGBTQIA+ community and trans community. This has to do with an insecurity within the person who's not part of the community.
Yes.
You end up seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, when you look back in history, Roman statutes, what did they have, like 3 defined genders in their laws? Look at indigenous cultures. Talk to anyone from the trans community. And I don't understand. I mean, I don't understand what any of it, like why any
why
of it.
does it why like, does it why, even matter? Why are you
I never
fixated?
Understood gender.
Mm-hmm.
I remember some person in college telling me that he aspired one day to be half the man I am. And that is because of who I am as a person and what men are perceived to be.
Mm.
And that's the fact of the matter. Some of the best men I know are women. You start to dig in what is a man and what is a woman, and you realize how convoluted these ideas really are, and for what and why.
More for control and
more for
divide.
Someone to try to understand where they fit in. It's for someone insecure in who they are and needing some sort of guideline. When, you want to talk about liberty. When you let that stuff go, you find a deeper appreciation and a deeper connection to yourself. When you just allow yourself, what does Alan Watts say? Be like a cloud. Like, have you ever seen a badly designed wave? No, they're always doing what they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, that's something we get
bogged down in,
yeah.
And that's the funny thing about it all, is that it returns to what we were just talking about. When we're all fighting about this stuff, it reminds me of this game. You ever play the game Ticket to Ride?
Yes.
Okay. So I've only played this like one day, and it was with another reporter when I was a cub reporter at the Suffolk Times, and my partner at the time. And my partner and my colleague were battling each other. And they were, taking the trains. I don't even remember how you play the game. You build a train.
Just as many routes
you build
as you
a train,
want. Yeah.
And while they were fighting, I was making circles around them and around the country, because that's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
You quietly build whatever, and you let the other people argue.
Yes. Continue to battle it out on their level. Wow.
And they tear each other apart.
Yeah. And that's what we're seeing now.
Well, it's not like it's a new game.
It's been there for a while.
It's not a new game, and it's one that, is very refined. And we look at the amount of money and poured into propaganda and disinformation, and sort of it's coincided with the rise of digital news and the reduction of papers, but that turn exacerbated the problem.
Yes, because
the papers were slow to we really, like, the pandemic was like a hard digital right? Like, it was like, if you haven't sort of gone into the space like you needed to in order to move forward, but the papers were sort of slow on the uptake, I guess, there. And you saw news deserts popping up around the country and spreading. And meanwhile, by the time that I graduated from the University of Missouri with my degree in journalism, we were already a divided nation as far as news. We were already separating into these tribal camps. news was being driven by clicks. You started seeing more sensationalist headlines. You started seeing people, like more advertorial content and, pandering content to what you thought the people wanted to read. You saw that already starting to happen.
What year did you graduate?
2010.
Oh, okay.
So here's another. Okay, so in 2005, I went into journalism. It's a nice touchstone here, because when I went into journalism in 2005, you needed to choose, and it was the year after they did away with dark rooms and went all digital. So this is another touchstone. So that was 2005. And you had to decide, okay, what sequence do I want to go into? Do I want to go into print? Do I want to go into sports? Do I want to go into broadcast? Do I want to go into a magazine? Do I want to go into photojournalism? I chose photo because I wanted the most creative. There was the most creative one. I was learning a skill because otherwise I would have gone into creative writing. And it was the least competitive. I never wanted to, I had a hard time because first of all, I do have that nature inside of me, but I don't like it. I don't like that part of myself. And I never wanted to step on someone else to get, I wanted to earn everything in my life.
Yes.
So, but by 2010, they completely did away with that. And all incoming freshmen were convergence journalists. Because by then, it was already the case that the future of journalism was you are the one-man band. You got to know how to shoot. You got to know how to collect audio. You got to know how to write for newspapers and for magazine. You got to know it all. So that's sort of where we were. And I remember coming into, my job at the Suffolk Times and, knowing that and saying, okay, digital news is where it's going. I felt that there would always be a place for the community paper in some fashion because that's what I had learned at Mizzou.
But you were seeing it starting to change.
What I was concerned about was that Americans were dividing into camps. They were getting their news from separate places that were getting into sensationalist spaces and advertorial content because newspapers were needing the advertising side more than ever. And I was thinking to myself, and it was like, oh, who's going to get it on first instead of who's going to get it right? And my hope and my belief was one day we would have reform. That one day people were going to demand and want to know the facts. Now we have gotten into an even poorer situation at press time in 2025 because news literacy is so low. Because the algorithm, who could have predicted that? It's insidious.
Yeah.
And by design, it's feeding you extreme content. And it certainly doesn't care whether it's true. And now... And
one-sided. Oh, biased.
Well, you don't know what you're getting.
Yes.
And who's... Because it's all about where are the eyes. And, and what the algorithm has discovered is that the eyes want crazy stuff. So you're seeing like people that have like very like in some cases little connection to the true, to reality. And of course, as we've seen the rise of things like alternative facts. It even hurts. It hurts to like say things like this. As a journalist, it's troubling. And of course, it's going to be an uphill battle, as I mentioned, to get people back to the table.
Because people are still just going to take in whatever information they want to.
You know what? What's the hardest part about it is who could have predicted what has been happening from the top in our country. When you have a president, for example, I remember saying, I long have said, well, the president is like a puppet position. They're not supposed to have a whole heck of a lot of power. They're like a mascot for the country. They're a role model. And I was thinking at first, this is not a good role model, because you see what happens when, you're, I don't know. It's tough to talk about. But people being like low key, is that what the kids say? Low key encouraged to harm folks that do not think like them. Pardoned. What just came through with the VA? Allowed to not treat patients that have differing political viewpoints. I mean, this is dangerous stuff. When the president was calling the press the enemy of the people, I remember towards the end of the first administration counting how old would I be if he got a second term, and thinking, I don't know if I could survive. I mean, and the hardest part of all of it is the normalization. People are so just overwhelmed that we are just going about our days.
Like, oh, well, what can we do
when we're on the brink of war? But I contend that if everyone said something and stood up, I feel like, and that's the problem, is that people do not believe that they have the power. They need to watch A Bug's Life again. Right?
Yeah.
What can one little ant do?
But I think I want to touch back on this again, but I wanted to ask just about your parents.
Oh, yeah, please.
Just in terms of what they did for work.
So my mother started an in-home daycare when I was a kid. And then she opened up her own preschool. And so she ran a business growing up, when I was growing up. And my father is a health official. He was working for the state for the past 5 years. He had come out of retirement during COVID and was like a senior manager for COVID in the state of New Jersey. And then the grants recently ran out. But then it's kind of cute because he was the officer of a health department for most of my life. And when I was very small, he was the health officer for like the Tri-County region for ShopRite grocery stores.
Oh, okay.
And then he, came to a local department around where I grew up. So for most of my childhood, he was like the health officer. So he ran a department locally. And so that's what he did. Yeah.
How did they meet initially?
My mother was a bartender at the Sheraton, I believe, in Hackensack, which is ironically where he's working now, in Hackensack.
Oh, okay.
Oh, he's now, and that's what I forgot to say, is it's come full circle because now he's a health inspector again in the same department where he recently trained up the new health officer. A lot of women who are now in the field.
Yes.
Which is cool.
Yes. And then I wanted to just, in terms of just your childhood, how it was growing up in New Jersey as a child, and maybe what activities you would do.
So it was actually very hard. My parents got divorced when I was in kindergarten. And my mother was not very attentive. She had there's a lot going. It was very complicated. And actually she was bedridden for much of my childhood. And I raised myself mostly. And it was the 90s, so it was stranger danger days.
Yes.
So I lived in a town that was like, I say it's like if Southampton and Southold had a baby. That was like the town where I grew up in New Jersey. And so it was very small and it was very well to do. And I spent a lot of time out. I spent a lot of time reading. Library, my local library was like a safe space for me. And I biked a lot. I spent a lot of time like in the woods, which, you know, little tree stands, tiny little like spit of trees, or the creek, the kill in my little town. I spent a lot of time outside and figuring things out for myself because of that.
Yeah.
And raising my little sister, who's like a year and a half, 2 years younger than me. Or I think closer to 2 years.
Was that going through middle school and high school? Was that a challenge? Or
yes. So I actually left. The situation became untenable. And as my mother got better, like her health improved and etc., it got pretty bad for me in the house. You know, physically, emotionally, psychologically, the things that were happening, which I always said the psychological piece was the hardest, I think. And it's also why writing became so important to me, because I needed to write everything down, because if I didn't, sometimes I would lose it, at least immediately, or if I needed to, it would come and go. So that helped me. That was like a defense mechanism, and that's how I really became a writer. And when I was 13, 14, my father asked me if he could use my journal entries in the custody, reignited custody battle to get me out of there. And I said, please, whatever will get me out. And that's what freed me. Because when my mother's side they saw what was about to be submitted to the court, they dropped the case. And I was allowed to leave. And it was very, it's complicated stuff, and it's very hard. And, we actually have a good relationship these days. Both my mother and I, and my stepfather, even despite some of the things that I've experienced. But I think that's because I recognize, first of all, I don't know. And I wouldn't this is not for everyone. These were the choices that I made, and I don't, I completely understand people when they cut off people in their lives that have hurt them or victimized them in some way. But for me, that was not the, I was able to have a relationship, and we're pretty close now. And that's nice.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
'Cause I didn't have, I was really like on my own. And I used to say, like, I wouldn't have wished to have other parents. And in some ways, I mean, this is the reason I am who I am. I didn't have anybody telling me who or how to be. So in some ways, it's a very cool thing, that I was able to find my way. But also, I mean, I also am very lucky,
Mm-hmm. Like, even coming out of high school, were you sure you wanted to, or in terms of what you really wanted to do?
I knew I wanted to be a journalist since I was in kindergarten. Like, I remember, I don't know if you had this, but our teacher had like the daily news on like those big whiteboards with the giant markers. And it's like,
yes.
Who has something for the daily news?
Yes.
And I'd be like, my dad and I saw a dead garter snake in Connecticut. I always had, and I, by the time I was in 6th grade, and they're like, what do you want to be? I'm like, I want to be a journalist. So I always had that sort of guiding star. And I think also I always wanted to write books and be an author. But another thought I had leaving high school was the same reason I went into photo, like, oh, well, I'll learn a new skill. I said to myself, well, if I want to write books, I better learn the publishing business. So that was another reason that I went into journalism.
And even picking, were you looking to get out of the Northeast, like when picking University of Missouri?
So when I was a teenager, I had this alter ego on a music file sharing program. And one of the people, I was like, where should I go to college? I was not a good student. I was like of the belief that I'm going to be working until, when I retire, I'm going to be too old to enjoy life and traveling and all these things. So I was like, I better enjoy my life now. And then I was very smart, which gets problematic. So I was like bored very often. And I was like, my grades would, were all over the map based on whether or not I was engaged, whether I was interested, so I didn't have a stellar grade point average. And I was also, obviously, I was going through stuff at home.
Yes.
And I was also just a huge rebel, and very much, what did I care about? I cared about the sexist, what do you call it? What people's clothes, what they wear? The dress code.
Oh, yes.
Because I dressed as I was what people say that boys dress and what do boys do and all, I was peeing in the boys' room in 2001. That's like decades before people decided to lose their mind about such things. I used to get locked out of the weight room because I weight trained with the wrestling team after school every day, but the incoming freshman football players couldn't put up the bar yet, and I was benching my weight at 120 at the time as like a sophomore, and so they would lock me out because I was emasculating them. And it was tough for me because I was too aggressive for the girls' teams. But I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to, so I didn't play because, I as soon as they split off into co-ed teams, I stopped with sports. And I always wanted to be a wrestler, but I couldn't get I couldn't will myself to try out because what was there was such a poor stigma for female wrestlers. And I would sit outside of the wrestling practice every day, but I never tried out. And same thing with the theater. I went every year to tryouts, and I would leave before my chance, even though in 5th grade, I had a solo. And I, was Lewis and Clark's dog in the play singing, about how life was rough. Get it? So, I don't know where I was going with this, but I had a lot going on as I was very much persecuted for who I was. I had, it was hard even going into like the changing room for gym because the idea and the acceptance for people like me was so, or the understanding was so low that like I was seen as like, this, that, and the other thing. And I'm just trying to be, I'm like, I'm not looking at you. I'm just trying to get changed into my sweatpants like everyone else, so it was tough, but I was so angry about all of the injustice at home and in the world. I remember 9/11. I remember, waking up in social studies to them talking about the war. And I said, what? The Congress declared war? And they're saying, Gianna, it's the war on terror. And I'm like, what does that mean? No matter where I looked, things were, to me, just so backward and wrong. And I remember I would stand up and I would speak out. And I feel like that's a good thing.
And that's even why you continue to pursue that path, or you think even more into journalism.
What do you mean?
Like just with speaking out and wanting to...
I think it's, for me, journalism is the pursuit of the truth. I just want people to be educated. I just want people to, make informed decisions. I just want to live in the country I was raised to believe I was living in. Liberty and justice for all. Remember that little ditty? I believe that stuff. I really like, and I believe one day we could live in the country we were supposed to have been in all this time. But until then, even if then, I'm always going to be, standing up for critical thought, period. If you've ever read, I forget what it's called, The Fifth Dimensional Man or The One-Dimensional Man. It's Herbert Marcuse. He's a modern philosopher. I remember taking modern philosophy. I got an A+. I'd never gotten an A+ in my life. I had an A+, and my the professor was like, you should be a philosophy major. And I was thinking, in my capitalist mind, LOL, what will I do with a philosophy degree? But, oh man, that's a great book. And it talks about the decreasing amount of critical thought. And that figures into the whole discussion about news literacy and, the situation in which we found ourselves where we're in 2025. It's already come full circle from 2003 and people are buying the same BS all over again. It's not even that long ago. And then when you look at civil rights, that wasn't even that long ago. But yet, I don't know.
But you've probably even seen change from just your career in journalism from the 2000s, even up until today, how that field has changed.
Well, yeah, and I talked a bit about how much it's changed.
Yeah.
You want to talk about, let's just talk about photojournalism. Mm-hmm. When I was my senior year, I remember taking a class called The Killer App, and it was about the rise of smartphones. And you talk about when I came in 2005, all the darkrooms were becoming digital. Well, today, I accepted a job as an event photographer. And I asked, hey, can I do this with my iPhone? Because I'll be more nimble. I will be able to send people the photos in real time at the event. And I want another standby I always stand by is these things are putting photojournalists like me out of work every day. I haven't picked up my DSLR in I don't even know how long. And that's not to say that, to poo-poo DSLRs and cameras like that. But I couldn't keep up with the degradation of the value of these machines and staying current with them and selling them and renting and all this. It's something that, I wasn't doing it full time. There are many full-time photographers and again, I'm not poo-pooing it, but I just know as a working journalist, I've blown up portraits the size of a front page, and it looks great,
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's not to say that you get a skilled photographer with a DSLR, then you get spectacular.
Yes. And then just in terms of coming to Long Island, what kind of brought you out this way?
So I was dating someone who worked for the viticulture department at my college.
Mm-hmm.
And I was graduating and I was like, look, I'm going to move back to be closer to my family. You can come with me if you want. He lined up a job in New Jersey, but an opportunity had come along on Long Island that he was putting off applying. And then during my family was coming out for me to graduate, and he was cleaning a spider web, and I don't know, he stepped in the middle of the glass table and went through the table and elbowed my MacBook out of existence. And so I said, look, if you put that in the closet and I never see it again, and you apply to that gig on Long Island, I'll never mention it again. But of course, then he got the job, and so I brought it up all the time, which was wrong. But it's how I came here.
Yeah.
And we ultimately split up, but there was just something about this place. It was a sense of home I'd never felt before living here. Mm-hmm. And I just had this, even though it was a little bit, like, I don't know, illogical for me to stay economically, etc., especially not having a family or support system out here and it being so expensive. I had something inside of me telling me to stay here. And so I did.
And then even you said working multiple jobs too at the same time, just making it work.
Yes.
Something that just wanting to stay out here.
Yeah. I had, I was freelancing for multiple publications and then also tending bar at multiple places. I started adding in some security positions. And I just I worked as much as I could and tried to sock away as much as I could. And ultimately, I was able to pay off my student loans and buy a little cottage, which as a single female first-time home buyer in 2020 was damn near impossible. Even with the funds, they did not want to give me this loan. And of course, it's become more difficult since the Great Recession. But I'm telling you, there was a time when I had met the lists of conditions multiple times and asked for, at some point I had to write a letter explaining why I used a P.O. box, which is wild.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, first of all, if you know anything about the rental market here, I'm moving every 5 minutes. And then I'm on the radio. I don't really want people knowing where I live. And I had to have write all this out in a letter and sign my name. And I remember they were they were dragging their feet so much that my rate was gonna unlock. And I don't know where I got the chutzpah, is that what you say?
Yeah, the chutzpah.
Yeah, and I said, well, if we don't close, you're gonna pay to have the rate, lock moved or whatever. And then suddenly it was getting scheduled. But I remember at some point during that period, I said, do I need to get a letter signed by God and endorsed by the president? Because I'll get it. I'll never forget that. And, but it was so hard. They make it so hard.
Almost like they want to, it almost feels like they want to keep certain people
yes!
out. Yeah.
And I always wonder about being a woman and how it figures into this. And it was like I had more than 20% to put down. But again, also there is a real stigma against gig workers and people who have multiple employment streams, which is wild to me. It's wild.
Yeah.
The systems are
so
up against you no matter what way you turn.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're at the top, then it's very easy. I never understood that. They give rich people free stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And think about the credits and how all that stuff. Luckily, I've always had very good credit.
Yeah, because that's another, but people get...
and it's something that,
It's like, you got to have a credit on here and you got to do this, and then everyone...
And nobody learned, they're not, well, that's changing. But a big complaint I've had up until very recently was that we're not taught that. I wasn't taught how student loans work, for example. And I was paying like the least I could on my student loans for most of my 20s. And I didn't realize that my student loans are getting bigger all this time. Nobody tells you how any of it works. It's tough.
Mm-hmm.
That's why being frugal is a very wise thing to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sustainable. It's good for the world.
Yes.
Buy your clothes at thrift shops. Trade with your friends. For me, my biggest hack was being a bartender, because I am out with everyone on a Saturday night, but I'm making money, not throwing it out.
Yes. But that's what they want you to do, is to keep spending, and
Oh, right. And
even if it's the stuff they're putting out today is not even made as well.
Alcohol, cigarettes, like all that stuff, fast food, all that. That's like, keeps people poor. And I mean, I also understand, and I get it. But there was a lot that I had to do without in my 20s to even get the roof above my head. And I knew that. I knew it would be like that. But the person, like I learned from my mother figure. My dad, he almost married this woman that he grew up with. And man, she is a very, very smart woman. And she taught me, don't go out on the weekends. Don't go to, just sock it away, work hard. And you just, like Ticket to Ride.
Mm-hmm.
Think like the people with the money. Listen to what people with the money tell you. Hang around them.
Mm-hmm.
And if it weren't for learning from people, from the haves,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Get a Roth IRA as young as you can. Sock away. Have an automatic withdrawal of whatever you won't miss. $20, $50. These are the things. And I'm not saying like it's tough, because then you get into that's like the big, one of the rifts between the generations is the Starbucks argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I see both sides. No, not going without coffee or whatever. It's not going to make the big difference. But that doesn't mean that there isn't some wisdom there.
Yes.
It's about balance, and it's about having a plan and like really thinking about it. But then again, we are in a moment where, I don't know. I might be doing things differently.
Mm. Just with everything up in the air right now.
Well, as I mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
in the 3 years between 2020 and 2023, the housing market changed that much that it became like where it was like you had to be slightly crazy to like, even if you're nuts, there's no climbing that wall. And I mean, I don't know, because I was told the same thing and I did it anyway. So I can't tell you.
Mm-hmm.
But things have changed. Things have changed so much in the past few years that like anything that I'm saying right now might not even be relevant right now,
Mm-hmm.
let alone
like a few months or a year from now.
Right.
Yeah. Just how fast everything is moving.
But I'll tell you what I'm seeing. I'm seeing like large swaths of housing down in Florida, etc. Rentals. And I do see the system being set up for a generation of like, what, proletarians? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
People that are just, very feudalistic. I mean, shoot, we're in like a feudalist society out here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't see myself getting out of renting.
Ever?
Out here. Well, at least out here. It's almost like
tough.
I'd have to move to
Right.
some other place
Well,
that's
right.
where there are a lot of houses for sale, or it is cheaper, but then...
That's not the worst consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad to say, especially if you were one of the people that's here generations and generations. Mm-hmm. But...
Because I've only been here 2.5 years, but...
Oh, I don't know. I feel like... I've lived in the Midwest, okay? Mm-hmm. I know. And I grew up in New Jersey and and I understand like people that never leave or, oh, I've never been west of the canal, stuff like that. I understand these things, but you got to see other places and how other people live. And, spending 6 years in the Midwest, I learned things like, oh, I grew up in a police state. Oh, like I have been paying wildly, exponentially more money for less. It's not the worst consideration. Mm-hmm. And that's why you're seeing a lot of movement.
Yeah, just even here more South Carolina, North Carolina,
the Carolinas, Florida, mm-hmm. in Missouri, people would go to Portland, they would go down to Texas, they would go to Austin. Yeah. So
I do like the Northeast.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I like it here.
Yeah.
But if you're looking also, at it from an economic perspective.
Yes, you're kind of...
I do want you to have a home if you can.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask also just, when did you get interested in radio? And
that came to me.
Okay.
So I had a bad car wreck when I was an undergrad down in New Mexico. Mm-hmm. And, they called my family and they said, she's still alive. When can you get here? And I broke C2 in my neck, my shoulder, my sternum, all my ribs, except for the little guy on top. And I had to be trached. So, you see the little line? Yes. It used to be like a sausage in my throat, like it looked like a cigar burn or something. And, they cut it out. So that's why it looks like that. But, I was in a coma for a while. Whatever Michael Jackson used to use to sleep, that's what they used to keep me in like a medical induced coma.
Oh my God.
Which shows you how much was going on for Michael. That's what they would give him to sleep. And it's ironic because when I woke up, I had forgotten Michael Jackson died, which is an interesting thing. But, what am I talking about?
Just
okay.
radio.
So after the car accident, which I lived with an NPR DJ at the time, and after I would close, I was a bartender and security person at the Blue Fugue. It was a bar venue. Cool people. Cool. We were cool. And after I would close up, I was Saturday night bartender. And after I would close up, I would sometimes go and visit my roommate Kyle and go on the air. And, but after my car accident, I remember the first time I went on the air with Kyle, I came out of the booth and everyone was staring at me. And I'm like, what? And they're like, you sound amazing. And after then, and they tell me there was no damage, but my voice did change. And so after that time, people would stop me like on the street or in like stores, and they would say, you sound like you should be on the radio. I'm like, haha, I get that all the time. And then I remember John Caracciolo. I was bartending at Tweed's, and he said, send me a reel because you should be on radio. And I'm like, LOL, what's a reel? He's like, I'm putting together this station, which is now 103.9 LI News. So that could have been, there's a quote, and I've misattributed it. I've misattributed this quote to Confucius. It's not a Confucian quote, but it's, the quote is, the road that you take to avoid your destiny is the one that leads you to it. That's what radio was like for me. Because, like, for example, that happened and I was like, whatever, I don't know what a reel is. That sounds like something, I'm already working too many jobs and etc. Mm-hmm. And then it's tough to talk about this because it's a story that I don't talk about and I worry about talking about it. But it has to do with leaving the paper. And it wasn't fair and it wasn't right. And it was not my choice. And it's hard to even talk about it. Mm-hmm. But I will say that, or maybe I will not say anything, but I'll say that one day I got a call from Bruce Tria at WRIV in Riverhead. And he told me that my ship was leaving. And I said, that doesn't sound very good. And he was like, well, let me put it to you this way. I think your ship is coming in. And I was like, well, that sounds better. Mm-hmm. And he offered me a spot on his radio station. And that's sort of where my career began. And it was like, I don't know, it was very serendipitous because it was a part of the story of me losing my job at the paper. Which I loved. And when I lost my job, I was producing a large chunk of the paper. And shortly after I lost my job, I was named one of the rookie reporters of the year for the New York Press Association. And it was devastating because I had to struggle. I think that that's part of my story. It's a big part, is that in some ways, it was made very difficult for me to stay here. Like I had to sell my N64 and all my games just to make rent to stay. And I think that the thought was to get me away, and the fighter in me was like, I'm not going anywhere, and I'm going to show you. And I fought, and I worked really hard, and it took so long for me to get back because it's also a very small pool. Mm-hmm. And I think that I was like, I think people were like, well, what happened? And, like an untouchable, I don't know. It was tough, but I never gave up. And, and then I'm here and I'm happy. I'm very grateful. Again, it's kind of like what I was telling you about my young childhood, which is like, I'm no stranger to being messed with and with injustice and like I'm the wrong one. You know, don't mess with me because I'm not going to hurt anyone else, but I'm not going to let you hurt me in the long run.
Yes.
Like I'm going to be okay. And like I will figure it out. And like I'm not going to let anybody else like determine my destiny. So that's all.
And just looking from then to working at WLIW, heart of the East End today, how does that feel?
Okay. First of all, I love my job and I love my company and I'm very grateful. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, it feels like fate because like my boss, for example, is also from Mizzou. So we share the same, which like, as far as journalism schools go, like it's like Mizzou is our like first and finest. And, you know, like I would contend that like you don't need a degree, for example, to be a journalist. Like you learn a lot from doing, but I absolutely value my degree from the University of Missouri and would recommend anyone that wants to study to go there. It's also a place where you do get a lot of experience before you graduate. But it's funny because the road that you take to avoid your destiny is the one that leads you to it. I was offered a full-time job in security, in night security, for a place in which the 1% is. And I thought to myself, I had been at Riv for 5 years. I was doing like a 1-hour program per week. And I thought to myself, can I afford not to take this job? No. Can I continue? Because at the time, at that moment, I was live streaming the show. And the live stream was being like exponentially consumed. Like it had outperformed the station itself. So it's like by the end of the first day, I was getting 1,000+ views on, the broadcast. So I was like, could I take it off the air completely, keep my sponsors, and pay my intern? Yes. So that was my plan. And I ended up losing my job shortly afterward where in which I lived. I lived at a different place and that I was working at.
Yes.
And they closed one more day, whatever. There wasn't enough room for me anymore. And there was no hard feelings. And, but it was, the funny thing about it is that I don't think I had lost my job yet. I think I was just thinking about leaving the radio station. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to do it. I'm going to tell him, like, that it's time to go. And I'm going to build my whatever. And I got a call saying that Bonnie Grice was retiring from what was then PPB, and that they were recommending me for her spot. And I was like thinking, how weird is that? It's like that Godfather quote. When you try to leave and they pull you back in.
Yes.
And I hadn't gotten it yet. I left before I knew that I would be getting this other gig. But it's just wild how things like turn out. And then I went from, 1 hour a week to 3 hours, 5 mornings a week. And that was very daunting. But Ed German, who the Urban Jazz Experience and Friday Night Soul, who was the one who wanted to bring me in the first place, he was like, "Gee, you'll be driving that board like it's a car." And he was right. So it was like I got very lucky. Both Bruce at Riv and Ed saw something in me. And thank goodness for people like that. People that are not threatened by talent. It's weird. It's a weird thing to say that. I only say it because that's what Bruce says.
Yes.
But thank goodness for people like that.
And how long have you had the show?
So I think it's 6 years now.
Wow.
6 years. This past March 26th, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think we've been a station 5 years. I think this is my 11th or 12th year in radio altogether. And my gosh, it's like gone by in a blink of an eye. And like I think this morning was maybe 1,340 episodes.
Wow. Oh my God.
And then I interview on average 2 people a morning.
Mm-hmm.
But like the first year I was on the air, I mean, it was like upwards of 10. And like yesterday was Juneteenth. I had 7 people on because I wanted to make as much room and space as I could.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot of interviews.
Yes. What do you enjoy most about your...
So this is the realization of what has, like, as a print journalist,
mm-hmm.
I would have these like obscenely large quotes, because to me, that's the beauty of journalism. I want to hear your story
mm-hmm.
from your mouth. That's pure. That's
yes.
You want to talk about taking yourself out. That's like, this is their story, that you heard it from them. You heard it from
it's not from someone else writing it out for them.
Well, or like filtered through your own perspective.
Yes.
It's very pure. So I love that. And I love that it's like, for me, I'm doing journalism every morning. Like, in addition to getting to read the news, which is super fun, and reading Michael Mackey's collations of the news, the local news,
mm-hmm.
which we are so lucky out here to have the wealth of journalists in the region keeping an eye on things. Like, we're very lucky when you consider the rest of the country. But, I get to let people see the process every morning. That's so fun. I love it.
Yeah. And just moving forward is it's probably, people might not want to talk about legacies, but what kind of legacy would you like to leave as a storyteller here on the East End?
Someone who cares. Someone who cares, who got it right, who was kind. I know that, like, I know those are very emotional, but it's like, it's been so divided and it's been so unkind, and there's like a culture of cruelty that is like, I don't think the overarching, but trying to, I don't know, I want to leave behind I'm not sure. Yeah, someone who cares and who got it right.
Yes.
And who tried. And who did it like above board. Didn't mess around, didn't, do things that they're not supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's important.
Yes.
And also, didn't feed into, any of the stuff.
Yes.
I mean, there were so many opportunities that I had, for example, to to be, or it's tough to say these things because I don't necessarily believe, I could have been 1,000 times a woman or whatever. I've had many opportunities to go into bigger markets, bigger positions, and social media, or I have had many opportunities that I have not taken. In fact, most of them. I've stayed small by design. I've stayed true. I have there's a lot I've said no to because it didn't feel right with my soul. And because also that I feel like fame and fortune and all of these things that we're supposed to want is like a trap. And I feel like it's where so many people lose their humanity. So I guess I want to leave a legacy as someone who didn't, who stayed connected.
It wasn't bought out to go somewhere else to a bigger state where they cared about the most.
Well, it's and doing the right thing.
Yes.
And they talk about organic growth, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotta feel, it's gotta carry this feels good.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been I don't like to make a bet unless I know I'm gonna win kind of thing. I like to feel safe and to feel good and to be able to function in a society where I see this sort of I don't know, where people hold things over each other. Mm-hmm. I want to know that I'm doing the right thing, mm-hmm. no matter what. That's why I'm not I don't know. Again, I've got to be able to put my head on the pillow at night because I've already, I grew up with insomnia. It's hard enough for me to sleep. And I feel living that way, that's how I'll change the world in my way. I want to be a role model because, I think about non-binary, queer, trans kids who could be looking at me and saying it's going to be okay. Because it doesn't matter this, that, and the other thing. I can be myself and I can embrace, if I, and I don't know. I don't know what I'm really trying to say. But
no,
the legacy okay. All right. I'm going to use a buzzword that I actually don't love. It's one of authenticity, right? But I'm having a problematic relationship with that term right now because I hear it an awful lot on social media from people that I don't know if I think they're just trying to believe their own BS kind of thing.
Yeah.
A lot of time you hear that from people where it's not. So I hesitate to even go there.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think the reason why I'm having such a hard time with this question is because I'm in a different place now. I'm in a place of making peace. I've made peace with the fact that I'm probably going to be forgotten within 2 generations. Most of us are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Yes.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of like, I don't know. It's something that like I recognize like through my journaling and my writing. It's not up to me. I don't know what my legacy is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's for
other people.
That's for these up and coming ones
to decide.
What the heck I was and am, because today that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I can feel good and happy and at peace and, but your legacy's going to be, I don't know. That's so tough.
Mm.
That's a good one.
And then I was going to ask, because I was just curious more, we talked about journalism.
Yeah.
And
it's one of my favorite topics.
Yes. But I was just curious, specifically for the East End of Long Island, what are your hopes for the future of the community and its people down there?
I'm glad you asked about community journalism, because it's something that I did not appreciate as an undergrad. You want to be in print, but I didn't appreciate or understand community journalism until I was doing it and until I had been doing it. And now I see, like, not only is it important, it's essential, because in a time like now, when we're talking about all these larger issues, strong communities, especially in safeguarding democracy, they're the way through, and they're how we get through. And so if you have strong communities with strong community, I mean, you're golden.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't know. It's really a beautiful thing. I have really come to appreciate the community journalist,
mm-hmm.
and what role they play. Even in the larger story. And then you asked about the future?
Yeah, the future of the...
Shoot. I think that gets into the legacy problem. The story's yet to be written.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to ask the journalist who's hopefully out there generations from now.
Yes.
I get very excited though when I see young journalists going into or coming out of J school, mm-hmm. or doing the job of journalism. Oh, chef's kiss, mm-hmm. as the kids say.
Yes. No, but I think we covered almost everything. But I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today and share your story and really all the work you're continuing to do, even providing voices for people on the East End of Long Island, and even having the passion to keep voicing during this important critical time.
It's what it's all about. And something I didn't say, which is especially as pertains to this moment, making space and giving space to marginalized communities has never been more important.
Yes.
And it's an honor and a privilege to be able to do what I do. So thank you to the readers.
Yes.
They're what it's all for, what it's all about, and what it's all because of, and
yes.
the listeners.
Yes. Definitely.
And people like you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 177 with Gianna Volpe. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.